How does a 19-year-old boy go missing in an environment he's not a stranger to? In this part of Finding Kessy, I tried explaining certain myths about his disappearance in an attempt to dismiss them. I presented my own explanation on the most likely scenario on how he might have disappeared through consistent facts about who he was, my own personal experience, and my general knowledge of the society at large. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification button for more documentary and short films. The idea that Kessy may have run away was based on the thought that a few persons believed he wasn't exactly in good terms with his family. But this isn't true, as I got to learn from a close source that Kessy loved his mother. Even though he was going to run away, he would by now have reached out, if not to anyone, at least to his mother. Another thing, if Kessy wanted to run away, I would believe he would have made basic preparations. Let's say a major bank withdrawal, carry a bag at his point of disappearance. You don't just go from looking for the perfect lodge to running away. Then there is this specific rumor that he ran away to Malaysia to hustle, but nothing indicated that he had any plans to run away, let alone to Malaysia to hustle. Kessy wasn't from a poor home, there was no need for him to have to hustle. Then there was this initial rumor of seeing Kessy with an old woman at Agbani Road, the place he disappeared, but that was only a reach for attention, because it turned out to be a false call. Kessy was a goldfish. He was tender, physically petite, and appropriately tall for his age. He didn't seem like the type who would want to get into a physical altercation with anyone or join a cult. This is a boy who had been caged up indoors all his life with little or no experience about the street life or the hard life. There wasn't any indication that he could have been a direct target by any group of persons. Except maybe there was. I got to have a conversation with someone who knew Kessy, and he had a strong opinion and believed that Kessy wasn't dead. In fact, he believes Kessy is abroad studying and living with a relative. This seems like bullshit for a moment until he added that Kessy had once disappeared, and that was why he believed what he believed. Now I had to reach for more. The fact that Kessy had once disappeared seemed to be an important detail, except it wasn't exactly that kind of disappearance. You see, Kessy's first school was the University of Ibadan. He was there for 2 years and was about to even begin his third year before his family moved to Oka, and he got his dream course, dentistry, at Enugu, and thus he had to change from the University of Ibadan to University of Nigeria, Nsukka. While he was at the University of Ibadan, he got entangled in some kind of scandal that got the school's attention and eventually his parents' attention. And when he got home, his phone was seized for a long period of time, depriving him of social media access. This was when people, and by people, I mean his online friends, began to speculate that he had gone missing. He did eventually come back and told a few friends what had happened. This scenario of him coming back online would play out again months after he had disappeared in 2016. He would be seen online on his Facebook. His social media friends would go wild and many of them would think maybe he had returned or he had been found. But it would be said that it was his sister who had logged into his account to find answers. Not many people would buy that story. And one of such person was his friend who thinks Kessy was living abroad with his relatives. Now it is unclear whether he changed from the University of Ibadan to the University of Nigeria because of the scandal. That could have been a possibility too, but it was said that it was because his family moved. So I am guessing this particular friend believes Kessy's parents had sent him abroad based on that one incident. But it's been 4 years too long, and besides, why would the family go through all they went through to find their son if they already sent him abroad? And wouldn't Kessy know that he was going abroad? Isn't that like a thing you want to share with your friends? Why disappear for it? But there is a takeout to this story, something that was consistent in every other story, but very contrasting with the kind of person Kessy should have been. And I will base my assumption on it. Fact. Kessy was a boy who was caged at home. His only means of having friends were limited to social media like 2Go, Facebook, or any other social media site. He had an active social media presence and he was a good looking young teenager, so One can only imagine the number of people who would have opted to meet him in person, or the number of people he would have wanted to meet himself. And for someone who wasn't allowed to leave the house whenever he was at home, his only chance of meeting friends was whenever he was at school. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Kessy most likely went to see someone he had met online and disappeared from there. Again, I am basing this assumption on personal experience, in-depth knowledge of how society works, and an overview of what kind of person Kessy was. Attention please. Now, in the previous video, it was said that Kessy most likely disappeared the same day he arrived at UNEC, G's place. However, while making research for this second part, it turned out that Kessy actually spent the night at G's place and only went on to meet A the next morning. Another detail was Kessy received multiple phone calls, not just from A. Now this changes a lot, and it is because of this detail that I believe Kessy went on to see someone else other than A. Maybe Agbani Road was closest to whomever he wanted to see, or maybe, just maybe, A knows more than what he is telling, because the final moment of Kessy as we know it was told by A. But then the phone rang. Kessy's phone rang for 3 days after he went missing. How do you explain that? If he was tricked into bad hands of people, why would his phone be allowed to ring for a whole 3 days without someone taking the call or turning it off? The phone ringing on for 3 days without anyone picking it or turning it off could indicate the phone wasn't of interest to whomever wanted to hurt him. But that was an iPhone. It was of great interest to everyone, especially to anyone who wanted to hurt someone who had one. Now, the second explanation I have for the phone ringing for 3 days without anyone picking it could be that maybe Kessy didn't want them to have the phone, thereby causing him to toss it away or putting it somewhere he hoped to come back and find. And you might ask, why couldn't he just give them the phone and come home? You see, giving someone your phone to save your life only works if it's just a robbery. And I don't think this would have been a robbery. It is not uncommon for people to be in situations where their phones could implicate them or be used as a tool against them, which could cause them to get rid of it the slightest chance they get. And I believe this was the case with Kessy. But for him, I believe it's much more than just a silly text message or photos that he was afraid of someone finding on his phone. It's not as though he was into internet fraud. Or maybe he was, but I only have rational evidence to believe that he had one reason to toss his phone away should he find himself in a situation. Although, a close friend of Kessy stated that Kessy was extremely careful whom he met online and that he only met people his age. But how careful can a 19-year-old boy be, and who says people his age can't be dangerous? But I still have to agree with this friend of Kessy's who thought Kessy was very careful. Kessy was very careful, but his carefulness as I see it was not mostly about whom he met online, but about his private life being blown open, not just to anyone but to his family especially. It is the same reason why he wouldn't tell his friends G or A where he was going, because G and A had direct contact with his parents because they were basically the first people Kessy's mother called when she couldn't reach her son. And based on the voice note I listened to, it was indicated that it was in Kessy's nature to just go and visit people without telling where he was going to. That was why G had said he wasn't initially worried when A told him he hadn't seen Kessy, because he felt it was typical of Kessy and that he would soon return as he always does. Only he didn't return. Another person also said that Kessy was sketchy with his whereabouts and the people he met, even to his closest of friends. Kessy had one big fear, and that was his activities finding its way back home. Again, I believe the scandal of his previous school made him tighten up about the things he did and whom he told. And maybe, just maybe, if he was in a situation where he felt his phone was going to be used to call his parents to maybe demand ransom or expose him of what he was doing, he would rather get rid of the phone. I do not know the particular situation behind the scandal that happened in Ibadan, but since his phone and social media were seized at the time, I can only imagine they had a major role to play in the scandal. And maybe he promised to change, and maybe he promised to be a better person and never to bring shame to the family again or disappoint them. All I can imagine was if Kessy was ever in a situation where the only way to be saved from it was to reach out to his parents, he would have chosen another alternative, even if it meant he too was never going to return home. Attention please. If you follow me on my Facebook, you will remember I did mention that this part of Finding Kessy was delayed due to a shocking new information I got that I needed to investigate. Well, I was unable to confirm the information as given to me, and so I am going to only allege and put it out there. And maybe you can make sense of it as you will. I was chatted up by a social media user who claimed Kessy was involved with a cultist friend. He said Kessy told him so, that he had a friend whom he was with at the time of the phone call, and that that friend was a cultist. This person also claimed that he spoke to the cultist, and the person agreed that he was a cultist, and also told him to stop calling Kessy. This was in early 2016, the same year Kessy went missing. None of Kessy's friends that I had reached out to could confirm they knew who this cultist friend was, although one person did say that it could have been A, because he believed the identity of A was also sketchy at the time. Personally, I felt it might have been an easy joke at the time played by Kessy on this friend, but who knows? This might just be the missing detail that could be needed to make sense of the mystery. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification button, as I still plan to follow this story if there is any update on it.